Welcome to the Athletes in Motion podcast, From Race to Recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Kenny.
How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'd like you to be introduced here to Kortney Dalrymple.
Hey,
Did I
Kortney.
do it right?
Hello. Yes.
All right.
Got the name right.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank
Now-
you. Thank you for having me.
Hang on. She's got lists here. She right now is a director and coach for Hyden Beach. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
You are also the adjunct professor at Belmont University
Yep.
and a consultant with the Gatorade Sports Science Institute. Did I get all of them?
Yes.
Can
I
I-
wear a lot of hats here.
Is your
Nice.
business card like 7 inches?
Incognito. I don't have it all listed on one.
Good. So we're here today to talk about hydration, right? And it's something that seems to be a pretty obvious thing, but it seems to be the most elusive thing for both everyday people and for athletes. Triathlon, nutrition and hydration is considered the fourth discipline. So it's that kind of important. So we want to talk about that today. We also want to talk a little about Hyden Beach, what you guys are doing over there, and all that good stuff. So to get started, how did you get to the Sports Science Institute at Gatorade? How was this something you enjoy doing your whole life, or is this something you fell into, or give us a little background on how you got started on this?
Yeah. My background, ever since I was in middle school, I played sports. My mom, she tried to get me in piano and dance, and I wasn't having it. So as soon as I started playing sports, I played softball and volleyball for ever since middle school, and I played throughout college. And then during college, I found out about exercise science. I didn't know that there was a degree that you could actually get in exercise science. I was actually an athletic trainer major and realized that was going to be a lot of hours with little pay. So,
Yes.
so I quickly moved to exercise science. But what I liked about it was so broad. So you can go in a ton of different directions with exercise science. So nutrition, hydration, biomechanics, strength conditioning, and I really like that. So I got my undergraduate and master's right away, and I had the great opportunity to be kept on to teach right at that same university for a year.
Can we name the university?
East Stroudsburg University.
Okay.
It's a state school up in Pennsylvania. Yep.
Good.
Nice.
And
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out. That was such a blessing in my life because that's kind of what started my career. Right after that, I got a position at the University of Pittsburgh, so I started teaching there. At the University of Pittsburgh in their exercise physiology program for 2 years. And that was great because I was able to implement some new courses in their curriculum, get more of a strength conditioning base in their curriculum, which is what I wanted to do. And then I decided, hey, if I think I'm going to continue this, let's go get our PhD. So I went down to Georgia to work on my PhD, and that ended up not being such a great fit for me. And then I called it my quarter life crisis.
Nice.
Figuring out where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And, I applied to 144 jobs.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a whole Excel
Wow.
spreadsheet. Everything from coaching to being a director to teaching. I mean, you name it. And the Gatorade Sports Science Institute came up on my list.
Cool.
I found them, and it was my number one. I'm like, I'm getting this job, man.
That's cool.
So I
We'll do a
knocked
whole
on the doors.
podcast on how to get a job out of 144. That's perseverance, people.
Yeah.
That is dedication
Yes.
and organization.
There you go.
So
For sure.
I went on the interview, and I mean, can you think about it? They were building a lab at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida, and they weren't telling anybody about it. So it was it was under the radar. Nobody knew about it because they didn't want to have their competitors do the same thing, Muscle Milk, Powerade.
Yeah.
So I was interviewing for a job I really knew nothing about.
We're doing stuff.
right?
And they couldn't tell you about it either.
Yeah.
How do you post a job for something that doesn't exist?
Exactly. So I was like, man, I really want this job, but I have no idea what I'm going to do. So we ended up having, after a bunch of phone interviews, we had the on-site interview. And they flew me down to Sarasota, Florida, which is just south of Bradenton, where the academy is, where the lab was going to be built. Yeah. And we had all the interviews at the hotel. And I'm like, now I'm going to the Ritz having interviews. Like, what is happening?
This is fun.
And so I went. I had a couple hours to kill. So naturally, to relax, I went and grabbed a beer, and then I went to a coffee shop to kind of chill out for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I need to see this place. What's going on? So I ended up going on IMG's website, calling every number I could find, emailing every email I could find. And finally someone called me and was like, yeah, you can come on campus, I guess, because it's a lockdown campus. You can't just rock up to that campus. And so I got on campus. I was able to get a tour. I was able to get the view of what the lab was, being built.
Yeah.
And so it was awesome. I left, flew back home. IMG ended up calling Gatorade and was like, hey, there was a girl here. There was a girl here. She said she was interviewing with you guys. And there was obviously a committee of people that were going to hire me. And my boss at the time was like, I want her. She has tenacity.
Oh, yeah.
She has,
Absolutely.
And it was funny because my second boss down at IMG, she goes, I was on that committee, and I was a hard no for you.
Oh, interesting.
You're too bold. Too bold for the Gatorade Sports Science Institute. So it's just, why I say this is because, you never know. And if you want something, stinking go after it, man.
Yeah.
So,
Jeez.
So I ended up starting up a Gatorade in 2011. And, I worked there till 2019.
So was there a specific emphasis you were doing at Gatorade, or what you had this thing? It was a mystery lab.
Can you talk about it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not a mystery anymore.
Is it like the DoD? I was building stuff.
I can tell you, but I'm going to have to kill you.
Exactly.
We'd like to know.
Right. So for the first few years, we were really focusing on collecting data in youth athletes. So we, I don't know if you guys know about IMG Academy, but it's basically a boarding school for high school athletes. They have now up to, I think, 10, 11 sports at their facility. So we were trying to understand the physiology behind what's the difference between a 16-year-old soccer player physiologically and a 16-year-old basketball player, males and females. I mean, we were just collecting data like no other. So, we were doing 8 one-hour tests per day. We were collecting physiological measures such as hydration, metabolic testing, we're doing body composition, we were doing reaction time, strength, agility. The whole gamut just to get a portfolio of that athlete. Yeah. So that was kind of my first 3 years. Then I transferred over into the service side. So the service side, meaning we serviced our collegiate and elite athletes. So, Gatorade is a huge brand and they sponsor a ton of different athletes and associations. So, they have a lot of affiliates and they have a lot of asks. So meaning if we would get a request from another sport, a company, a brand, a team, they would call us and say, hey, we're having XY issues with our players. Can you come out and help us?
I see.
And so that's where I came into play. I would try to understand what the issues were that they were having. Then we would conduct tests in their environment and then provide them their results based on the testing that we did with the players.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds like it'd be fascinating because it's different every single time, right?
Yeah, it was. And it was really cool because, you're talking about the top 2% of athletes could be in the world, definitely in the country, right? So you're looking at this small group of athletes, and so they're having these really specific issues. Yeah. So it was really kind of cool to see some of that data. This data was really, really interesting when we collected it all.
Wow. Wow.
Huh. So let's use some of that data. So our focus topic today is around hydration, because hydration is, as you point out, you're looking at elite athletes that are still, I'm assuming part of the issue was around hydration and sort of movement. So when you say that, when someone comes up to you and talks about hydration, how do you perceive that? What is, it sounds weird, but what is your definition of that? How does that roll around in your head, I guess, when you hear, is somebody properly hydrated or not hydrated? Is it just, hey, I need to drink a lot of water at this amount of time, I got to do half my weight in ounces? When you hear that, what's two things? What are we supposed to take from it? And secondly, what's it supposed to do for us, I guess?
Okay. Yep. So I guess how I think about I'm a very analytical thinker. So when someone says I have an issue with hydration, I want to know way more information than that. When? What are you talking about? Are you getting heat illness? Are you getting heat stroke? Do you get fatigue during training? Is it all throughout the day? Is it just around certain sessions? Is it just certain times of the year. Like, I just want to know more information to be able to help that athlete to better pinpoint what's going on. And then, I'm talking about not only fluid, but electrolytes as well. Electrolytes it plays a huge factor in hydration. So I'm kind of thinking of both components there.
When when you hear sort of the term of half your body weight supposed to be in ounces, that's obviously that's not. And then you vary based off of kind of your condition. If you're doing endurance stuff during the day, or if you sweat a lot, those kind of things. Is that a good number to go by, or is electrolytes just, should I go get a Gatorade, slam it down, and say I'm good, or can we say other things besides Gatorade?
Yes.
Is that allowed?
Yes.
Other electrolyte
Other
drinks,
electrolyte drinks.
Yeah.
Or do we owe Gatorade money if we say Gatorade? I can't figure out the.
Do you think they'll sponsor the episode?
don't know.
I mean, we should ask them.
We should ask
Right.
them. So does that? I don't know if that question makes sense.
Yeah, and I think just because of my background, I think a little bit differently. So it's good to have a general base understanding, because some people have zero clue how much to consume, right? So I think for the everyday person, the lay person, like, at least have a baseline in place, so that, half your body weight in ounces, like, that's a good place to start and see what happens from there.
Okay.
But I'm more interested in seeing, okay, if that person trains a lot, like, you're a triathlete, so you probably train a lot and you probably sweat a lot.
Yes.
So, right. So that numbers may not be appropriate for you.
Yeah.
And so I want to know a little bit more about what you do. And I would probably do a little bit more, and not so much testing, but more monitoring for you.
Got
so
it.
Meaning, get some daily body weights from you, see what you're losing during a training session, just to get more information from you, because then I can better get that number a little bit more appropriate for that type of person.
Got it.
And when we're talking electrolytes, are we talking what? Is sodium included in that? Potassium?
Yep. So sodium.
How
so
does that,
we
magnesium?
lose.
How does that all play into?
So we lose a lot of minerals in our sweat, right? But sodium's going to actually be the highest one by leaps and bounds.
Got it.
So if you have a normal diet, you're probably getting enough potassium in and magnesium in. Some people struggle with the magnesium part and then can take some supplements. But sodium, by leaps and bounds, you're losing a ton more than the other two. You lose a little bit of calcium too. But again, sodium is your primary loss of mineral loss in your sweat. So I'm focusing a lot on sodium when I'm picking my products.
Got it. And so how do we measure the amount of sodium versus water? And is the sodium the one? Now, correct me if I'm reaching out here, because I'm not that educated on it. Sodium helps absorb the water that we're taking in, or how does that play?
Yep. So kind of twofold here. So yes, sodium does help with fluid retention. So then it will help with that hydration part.
Got it.
Sodium also has a play in that muscle contraction process in the body. So there has been a ton of research trying to pinpoint why muscle cramps happen, right?
Yep.
And we still don't know, which is so frustrating,
That's
right?
gotta be, yeah.
It's
Pickle
so frustrating.
juice, it's a banana.
We've tried everything.
It's a
Yeah.
pill.
So, I can't, again, the research, there's not enough to back it up there. And there's been research going on for decades on trying to figure out muscle cramps, right? Anecdotally, I found over the 2,000 sweat tests that I've done, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, sodium can help with some people. Some cramps can be due to muscle fatigue, and you kind of can't really help that. But some cramps can anecdotally be due to sodium losses, especially if there's a ton of sodium losses.
Yeah.
It also can be linked to a sodium and dehydration combination too. So but that's not going to be in all people and all cramps.
Yeah, everyone's going to be slightly different on it depending on what they do.
Yeah.
So on the sodium side, how would I figure out how much sodium I need? I know personally, anecdotally, I'm a heavy sweater and I lose a lot of salt. I can tell from the sweat stains on my shirts and jerseys and stuff. I can see all of that.
Yep.
I also know that I do get some leg cramps and some feet cramps, but if I pour a ton of salt on my food, that seems to get a little better. But I don't know how much I should be using. I just use a lot.
Yep. So
Not always good.
Yeah.
People look at me a little funny when I grab
I'm
the big
sure.
shaker. I have a massive salt shaker, and I just dump salt on
Yep.
things because that's the only thing that seems to help for me. But I've never gone and measured it.
Yep.
Of all the years that I've done this, I've
Yeah.
never actually
Yeah.
measured that.
So you can do, and that's what I call sweat testing. So that's what I've done probably for the last 4 years, and what I continue to do with the Gatorade Sports Science Institute is one of our major tests, major asks is to do sweat testing. So the results of that is you have sweat sodium concentration. So basically how salty of a sweater you are. That's mainly determined by genetics and just the basic physiology of a person. Then you have hydration. You could be a heavy sweater, you can be a light sweater, right? That is due to a number of factors, right? That's due to the intensity of training, that's due to your fitness level, that's due to the environment then you're going out and training in. There's so many factors that go into the hydration, how much you sweat aspect.
Yeah.
But what you have to do is you have to put them together. So meaning I could have a low concentration of salt loss, so meaning I don't lose a lot of salt. The concentration of salt that I lose is pretty low, but I can be a really heavy sweater. So ultimately, I'm going to lose a lot of sodium because I'm a heavy sweater.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So typically the higher risk folks are the ones that are going to have that higher concentration, that they're going to be a salty sweater and sweat a ton. Those are the folks that you typically see the issues with heat-related illnesses or cramps, or they fatigue really quickly. Those are the ones that you're like, okay, we really got to nail this one down.
Got it. Okay.
So I wanted to go through a couple of myths around, or are they myths or not?
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So as an endurance athlete, I'm told 20 to 24 ounces of water during an endurance. Try to get 20 to 24 ounces an hour when you go through an endurance event. Is that a relatively good yardstick to measure by?
Again, so I always look at this from the lens of what I've done, my previous experience.
Yeah.
And that's a good baseline to go by.
Okay.
You know, some people, especially during endurance training, you're going for a long period of time.
Yep.
So, for team sport athletes, we're looking at anywhere from about 16 ounces that they consume for every pound lost of weight that they do. So with the endurance-based folks that they're training for so much longer, they're competing for so much longer, having that a little bit higher seems to be appropriate. But again, it all depends on the conditions that you're training and the intensity that you're training in, because, you could induce hyponatremia as well. If you're only consuming water-based fluids with no electrolytes, and then you're consuming that amount and it's not very hot outside, and then you could induce hypertremia, which could end up having the same effects as dehydration, and now you don't know what's going on.
So is it around muscle cramps? Is it around, how does that manifest itself then physiologically? If I do, how does that?
In terms of the fluid that you're consuming?
Yeah, so if
you're taking in too much water.
Exactly. Does it have that same cramping effect? Does it have the
You'll
same
have the
lethargy?
fatigue, you'll have the fogginess, you can get dizzy, you can feel almost that the same issues that people have with dehydration, like that.
And then you won't know which direction to go.
And so
you need a professional at that point to tell you.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't see that a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the dehydration is more prevalent.
Yeah.
But you will see that, especially in endurance-based athletes, just because of how long they're training for. And then, when that happens at the end of the race or at some point during the race, you need somebody there to really be like, hey, what did you consume during the race? So then I know how to help you.
Yep.
Endurance athletes have a tendency to go, well, if 24 ounces is good, 48's got to be better. Well, see, if one is good, 5 is better.
Yeah.
Let's crank on it. So we can definitely get into that mode. So also, how does the environment? We talked about the environment coming into play. Dry climate versus humid climate.
Yeah, it's going to make a huge difference.
What do you need? Because I've heard both on this, and I've heard arguments both ways. Where like, oh, you sweat more, but it evaporates quicker in a drier environment, but you sweat less because it stays on your skin longer, so you need less in a humid environment. So what is the...
So what's the purpose of sweating, right? So the purpose of sweating is to decrease our core temperature. Our body's trying to cool itself. So it's taking that heat and throwing it out to the skin, and then it's going to get evaporated in the air. When it's humid outside, you're right, it doesn't have that ability to evaporate as easily. But now what's happening? That core temperature could potentially increase because I'm not getting that heat out and dissipated out of my body.
Yeah.
So that's where you tend to see issues with heat illness, is when it's really hot and humid.
So you need to drink more?
So
consume more, I should say?
Well, what could help is drying your skin off, wearing
Okay.
those certain
okay.
shirts
The tech shirts and sleeves
the wicking
and
the sweat away from your skin. Because if people are wearing long sleeves and it's really hot and they don't have the type of clothing that will take that moisture away from the skin, now they're creating a full microenvironment around their body that's kind of just holding on to that heat.
Got
Yeah.
it. So we want to dissipate the heat. That's
We want to
key.
get that out.
It's like a low country boil.
Yeah, exactly.
So enough about Kortney. I want to talk about me. Two challenges I'm having, and I think this is not unique. This is why I'm bringing it up. One of the biggest challenges I have is I'm trying to keep to that 20 to 24 ounces thing, but I get stomach slosh like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm told, look, you got to do this, right? So I'm trying, and I've got electrolytes. I got 2 bottles on my bike. One of them is a standard water bottle. The other one's got some other product on it.
Unnamed product.
Unnamed product at this time, which has kind of the standard stuff. And I have a little bit of like Carbo Pro just for some, but I'm having slosh issues. So I'm trying to do it. I'm really trying.
Yeah.
And then it's just, is that a lack of, am I just not having enough sodium? Is that one where it's just not getting through my system? Because it's been eluding me for years.
Okay. Well, a couple of things here. So do you need then the 20 to 24 ounces? Like I would kind of switch your thought and be, hey, maybe I should weigh myself before and after the training session and see how much weight I'm actually losing. If I'm within about 2% of my body weight, then I don't care. Like I'm good. You know, I'm not going to, I don't tell people to be 100% hydrated during a training session. It's not going to happen. I want them to stay within about 2% of their body weight. If you're within 2% of your body weight and you're consuming maybe 15 ounces or 16 ounces and you feel so much better, do that.
Okay.
But also there is, you have to train your gut. So our gut, just like we train our muscles, we have to train our gut. So, you know, you have to train it with fluid, but also carbohydrate consumption. So if you go from, and it sounds like you've been doing this for a number of years, so this might not be an issue for you, but if you go from consuming nothing and then saying, oh, I need to consume 20 to 24 ounces during my training session, now you're trying to do that, your gut's going to be pretty upset and you're not going to feel too well. Same thing with carbohydrate. So we have to train our gut, but we also have to understand, is that number really appropriate for you?
Okay. And that's, what I haven't done is, because if I go to do this sweat test, is it like a 30-minute test? Is that how you do it?
It depends. I go by your training session. So I want to make this as realistic for you as possible. So if that means 3 hours, we're going to do it for 3 hours.
And then do I take fluids like I think I should be taking fluids?
You do what you normally do because I want to capture that.
Okay.
And then she's going to tell you how it's all wrong.
I know it's all wrong. Yeah.
And what you should be doing
Like,
better.
really? You've been doing this for years this way, huh?
Really? Worked for you, huh?
Really, huh?
That's nice.
Clearly not, because I see your results. So the second one is, okay, so I think I'm doing okay. It's hotter out than I anticipate. I go out. I'm in the middle of this endurance. Let's say it's going to be a marathon. And I have a rut row moment. Like I'm getting dehydrated. No. That's a whole nother podcast we'll talk later. It happened one time. Leave me alone. So you know you're getting dehydrated. You can tell something. You're starting to bonk, right? How do you come out of that? Is it time? Is it you're too late? Is it like save it for another day? Like just gut through this one and take lessons learned, or can you come out of a nosedive? I guess.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be tough if you're already there and you feel that you're already there to get you out of it by the time you need to get out of it.
Okay.
That's why planning, especially for endurance athletes, is so important.
Okay.
That planning, that prep, if you know, okay, I know how long my race is, I've practiced consuming this much amount in this environment and consuming this much amount carbohydrate in this environment, then I'm like, okay, I have a good plan in place. But, I always say, practice what you're going to try during practice. Don't try anything new during a match.
We
or
keep telling people that, and they still go out and try new stuff.
I know. And then they're feeling like,
and then they don't know
awful
why.
and
Nothing new on race day.
Yeah.
Nothing new on race day.
Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be tough to get yourself out of a hole. Not saying it can't happen. It just depends how deep you are in that
If
hole.
you're 6 hours into a 12 to 14 hour day, that's the thing that draws me to the endurance lifestyle and the athletes that I work with is the fact that we can practice it. We got it perfect. We nailed everything, but it's never going to go 100% right. And how do you deal with that? And that's part of the fun. Part of the fun is going, okay, whoops, temperature is different. I'm not used to this. The winds are up. What am I doing? All of a sudden, I've got to make these deviations and to get to the finish and get the goals that I want. And that's part of the fun of it. So that's why we keep looking at, like, if we're 6 hours in and we're bonking because we're out of electrolytes or, not getting enough water, we're overheating. What do we do at that point? I mean, how do we get ourselves out of the nosedive?
Yeah. And there's stupid things. Like I did a half Ironman where I put too much powder in my bottles, so it tasted like crap. So I didn't drink the fluids I was supposed to. And if you look at my before photo and my after photo, I mean, I lost 6 pounds. During that race.
You could see it.
And you can see it also when I'm kind of coming across the finish line looking like, walking death, right? Because it just cratered everything. Hey, switching gears, because we talked a lot about endurance. So let's talk about sort of bodybuilding and sort of CrossFit training and other things.
And team sports. How does that affect?
I think
to endurance.
So if we look at, because we're comfortable in the endurance world, we have a lot of folks that come to the shop that talk about, they're CrossFitters. They'll come in with a gallon of water with them, like they're supposed to drink the gallon of water. When you look at sports that are like CrossFit, that are 45-minute sort of hit things, is that a different? Obviously you still have to drink throughout the day, but is that a different sort of focus at that point? Then during those times, it's less worried about the hydration. It's more worried about sort of before and after, or is that relatively the same? So I'm in the middle of, a 45-minute jam session.
Yeah. So, if you're consuming some fluids, you're probably not going to have an issue during that such a short period of time. But it now is going to be important for you to consume fluids before and after to make sure that you're replenishing and preparing yourself for that session. The folks that are, they carry a gallon of water around. I mean, here's the thing, again, everybody's going to be so different. And that intensity of training and how the physiology behind that person is going to be so different than the person working out right next to them. So I don't like to give kind of general guidelines to people. I like to say, okay, what's your urine color like? How are you feeling during the day? Are you losing a lot of weight during your training session? Those are the factors that I like to focus on a little bit more.
That's when you're good friends, is when you can ask urine color. That's when hey, how's your urine color, Tom?
Is it apple juicy?
Exactly.
I'm more on the stout kind of range.
Stout kind of range. I'm more of an IPA guy, but I try to keep it light and crisp.
We'll just call 911 right now.
Yeah, which is funny because I tried the gallon thing and I think I was peeing every 15 minutes and it was like ridiculous. So.
Yeah, I think I was actually, when I was doing some strength training at one point, I was drinking so much that I was getting more cramping because I think it was actually flushing my system because it wasn't that warm out. And I was trying to do that. Well, you have to have that much. And it was too much. Way too much.
So for the average person listening to this, they're not endurance athletes, they're not doing CrossFit, they're just getting started out. What would be sort of the one or two things that you would have them sort of think about as they start doing that? We talk about recovery as an important thing, like, hey, don't wait until you're sore. We think recovery is a helpful thing throughout that. On a hydration side, what would be those one or two things that you'd want them to start being a little bit more educated about?
Yeah, I would just start thinking about, start thinking about looking at your pee color, the color of your pee. So 'cause that's such an easy way, an easy indicator to use to say, okay, I might not be consuming enough fluids right now. And then when people think of fluids, they think of water, but fluids is much more than that, right? So fluids could be milk, it could be an electrolyte drink, it could be juices. I mean, there's so many options to fluids, so don't think that you're pigeonholed into consuming only just water when we're thinking about fluid. And then especially if these folks are outside for long periods of time, in the summer, in the heat, in the humidity, making sure to have some electrolytes in their fluids. I think because of the medical side of sodium, it's gotten a bad rap. But from the performance standpoint and how much we actually lose in our sweat, I think it's important to, hey, if you're doing certain activities, you're outside a lot, you're training a bunch, few hours, like let's get some sodium in there, especially, like if you were, you're a salty sweater, you sweat a lot. So that's important for you, right?
Yep.
I mean, some people crave sodium after their tournaments and events. And why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good fact.
What about the folks that are not very active and they're sitting at home drinking tons of coffee? They still need to be concerned about electrolytes. They can still get dehydrated just by not drinking
enough fluids.
The right fluids.
Yeah. And
probably.
More than likely, if we're talking about that group, realistically, if they're consuming a normal American diet, they're probably getting in enough sodium. And if they're not exercising at all, then they're probably good to go. But they lack in the actual hydration standpoint of getting enough fluids in.
Got it. Awesome.
Right kinds of fluids, right?
The right kinds, yeah.
Coffee in the morning, beer in the afternoon.
Yep.
coffee all day, and then finish it with a beer.
Yep.
Yeah, all good.
A little whiskey at the end, and all day. So let's talk Hyden Beach.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about Hyden Beach. What's going on there? Why did Mr. Hyden decide to come to Tennessee? Could you give us a little background on Hyden Beach and what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So John Hyden and his family, Robin and his two kids, Sam and Jackson, they moved to Franklin, Tennessee almost 3 years ago. And, they moved from California just to have a better
Darn Californians.
Right?
They're just taking
Every
over.
single one of them.
Just to have a better quality of life for their family.
Yes.
And they absolutely loved it here. And so John, he's still playing professionally on the AVP tour. So that's the the professional volleyball tour in the U.S. And so he's still training, he's still competing, and he has this pie in the sky idea of wanting to build an academy here. Really, it was his wife, Robin.
Yeah.
But so he started training some girls here right when he first moved. Out of one of his players had a sand volleyball court at his house, and then slowly over time, talking to people, just getting to know the community, build relationships. They were able to find land to lease from the Hustle Factory down in Spring Hill, Tennessee. So John and his folks, they built up 6 sand courts on the side of the Hustle Factory, which the Hustle Factory is a sports complex mainly focused on baseball, but they do have indoor volleyball there, and they're building it up to potentially have more sports and kind of to build maybe a small IMG Academy. So we opened up June of 2020. It's been really new.
Great time to open,
right?
Just
perfect year for that.
Perfect year.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we were lucky enough. We're in Maury County, so they didn't really have any restrictions against us being outside and training the girls, and which was awesome.
Helps being outside.
Yeah, especially, yeah. So we kind of just been growing and building from there. I mean, John focuses on the coaching aspect and his girls that he kind of brought into the academy, they're a little bit older. They're trying to get college scholarships.
Got it.
We're trying to build a larger, more robust program that has kind of that wide variety of ages and levels, from the junior aspect, which is our Hyden Beach Academy, to all the way through adults. So we're understanding the demand of what people want to do here and how they want to play sand volleyball. If they want to play sand volleyball, what they'll come out to do. And, I just moved to Thompson Station less than 6 months ago, so I'm kind of learning the area as well. But Hyden Beach, we're running tournaments almost every weekend now. We just started the season last week, and our academy goes year round. These girls will train if it feels like 40 or above. I mean, honestly, they'll train if it's colder than that, but we won't trade it.
Yeah, you
I
won't.
won't.
I know.
You'll be inside telling them what to do.
Yeah,
through
right.
a bullhorn
I mean,
or
the
something.
sand it gets frozen some of these nights.
Yeah.
When we were back
No
in
kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't know sand can get frozen.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
Huh.
So back in January and February, it was
Wow.
Yeah.
So you host pro tournaments.
Yep.
You host sort of amateur tournaments,
Yep.
right? You do academies for kids,
Yep.
and also you do is it an academy for adults, or is it just?
Yep. So
okay.
we're doing a lot of private coaching right now, which is awesome. I'm starting up some adult coaching clinics, like practices, I guess you could say.
Sure.
But in April, and then we just started this practice with the pro with John, which has been great. So
Nice.
yeah, so you pay like $15, and then you can just join into one of his practice sessions, which I think is really cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, and then we're starting up leagues in April. Kind of April's that time frame where, everybody's really getting itchy to come outside. It's warm enough for them to come outside. And, we're going to start up leagues, going to hopefully have something going on there every night. We host corporate events. We're running a league.
Oh, great.
We're running a league for Ramsey
That's awesome.
Corporation. Yeah. And a couple starting in April. So yeah.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like it's going to be a great year.
Yeah. We're hoping so.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to meet up with you guys last year,
Yeah.
and able to do a couple of these tournaments. And these pros came in, and I was talking about just sort of anecdotally, like, hey, what do you think of the place? And they loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it. Said sand's great. This is a great venue. I mean, they were singing its praises. So
Yeah. How did you feel about some of the pros that came out? There was some good ball that you got to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, and I don't want to call out people that are just trying, but it's funny to watch the pros. I mean, they're doing 42+ inch verticals. They're they look like the poster. It's amazing. And the next day, the amateurs show up, and it's the same sort of feeling that they want to have, where they run up to the net, they go to jump, and it's like 2 inches off the ground, and it's and they're trying, but it's like up until the actual jump, you look just like the pro, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I know why they're pros. Got it.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are
The effort is there.
Exactly.
The effort's the same. The energy is the same. The result.
Yeah, and the women's pro, I mean, they're just, I mean, it was good
We
games.
had some ballers last year,
they were fierce. So it was just fun to see.
Yeah.
So
But that's what I love about the game, though, too, and Hyden Beach, because everybody just thinks because John and his background, like it's just only professionals we're letting through the doors, which is not the case. Yeah. We want to service our community, and we want young kids to adults who's never played the game to have that same experience and that same love that we have for the game.
Sure, and that's one of the things that we keep focusing on is the active lifestyle. What is an active lifestyle? It's movement, right? Volleyball's great movement.
Yeah, especially in the sand.
Yeah, in the sand, it's insane. I mean, I played a little bit of volleyball years and years and years ago, but on a basketball court, set up that way, and on the sand, it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah.
I mean, you wow, the workout that you get, the strength training that you do from that, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great to add into some cross training.
Yeah, and it's fun. You get to be outside and gosh.
So the type of people that you generally get, are those people that played volleyball before, or people that are curious about volleyball? Is it people that played indoor, or what would be the profile of somebody that sort of comes to Hyden Beach?
All the above right there. So we get the ones that have played sand, and then they find out about John and are like, oh, I want to get training in that group. We have the indoor players that, they didn't even realize sand is an NCAA sport. And now they're like, oh, I can get a college scholarship playing beach. Oh, sign me up. Yeah, let me get on that. So they're the ones, okay, I have the base of volleyball. Let me take that next venture out and try sand. And so we get a lot of those girls and players as well. And even a lot of the adults, it's such a fun game. I mean, you have all these leagues, like sand volleyball leagues are all over the place. You have tons up in Nashville, but you have these players that some of them actually want to get better. So now they're going to join our clinics and get out for a little bit of private sessions just to understand, okay, I love the game, but how could I get just a little better?
Yeah, exactly. And when you see these student athletes that come, what is sort of the formula that you see for when you're going, these girls are going on to college, like this person has it? Is there, go back to what you originally did to get to the Gatorade Institute, right? Tenacity, drive. Do you see a profile of that sort of athlete? What do they need to have in order to be able to do, other than just the physical? They're physically good. I mean, it takes more than that. I guess, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, to get from high school to college, how do you stand out, right? So the work ethic is going to be huge. Having a good attitude on and off the court, and especially on the court when you're losing, right? How do you represent your team? How do you represent yourself?
That's a really good
when
point.
When you're in a bad position score wise. Do you hang your head, or are you like, hey, are you motivating? Are you positive? Are you lifting your teammate up? That's a huge factor that a lot of college coaches look for, because even though it's an individual sport, you're only playing with one other person and you're really focusing on your skills, ultimately at the college level, you play as a team. Mm-hmm. So that's how you win college duels is your teams, your pairs have to win the majority of the duels. Mm-hmm. So you're ultimately playing on a team, and you have to have that team mindset. You have to have willing to put in the work and willing to get the reps. It's a lot about reps, repetition, mm-hmm. and the work ethic is huge.
And you're representing the school, you're representing mm-hmm. the program. Yeah. All of that comes into play, and I don't think people realize that enough. Yeah. All of that stands out wherever you go afterwards. It says something about the program.
Yeah.
That's important.
And a lot of these college, I can make anybody look good creating a highlight reel, right?
Yeah.
Like
I can edit.
Right. But so these college coaches, they want to see a whole match. They want to see what's happening during the highs and the lows. So I think that's really important for these high school girls and high school boys to understand, is that, they want to see you as a whole person, not just the best parts of you mm-hmm. or what you portray as the best parts of you.
Now, when I went to, I think the last tournament, there was a couple of the girls that were paired up, haven't mm-hmm. been paired up before. Is that a normal thing? I mean, is that unusual or usual thing that usually happens? And then if it is sort of like, I've just met this person, we played twice before, how do they adapt? I mean, that seems to be like really, because you have to have a language. I mean, you see the pros on TV, they're always together. They've been, partners for years. Mm-hmm. How do they get to that kind of gelling point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, especially when these girls are first starting out, you're focusing on your skills, right? And getting better within you. But then you also have to figure out, okay, who can I be paired with that will complement me and my skills, right? So, typically, if I'm looking just at face value, I want somebody that's going to play the opposite position. And what I mean by that is typically you have a defender or you have a blocker, mm-hmm. Or two split blockers. So you're probably not going to thrive, especially now with how big and competitive sand volleyball is getting with two defenders. There are some anomalies out there, but mm-hmm. typically not. So I'm typically going to look for, I'm 5'4", so I'll always look for somebody that wants to block. And then typically you have a side. So I'm mm-hmm. left-handed, so I play right side. Mm-hmm. If you have a dominant side, you're typically looking for that opposite side. That's kind of how you start. But then you go from there. You have to have chemistry with your partner. You have to be able to communicate well. If you have two people who are just naturally very shy and naturally very silent on the court, that's probably not going to go over well because no one's going to be talking to each other and everybody's going to be very timid, right?
Yeah.
So you have to find that chemistry. And it's difficult. You might, even as an adult, you might kind of rock through a few partners before you find the one that you really mesh with.
Yeah, because it seems like it'd be a difficult thing if you're at a different level than this other person. Mm-hmm. And to your point, you're trying to be a team player. You're trying to, it's like, look, you're supposed to be the blocker and you're not blocking. Yeah. That would be, how do you, to your point, how do you not get frustrated and make sure you motivate that person? Because if you start going against one another, you're going to lose.
You can't build that trust. Yeah. You need to have that trust to know that you can go for this shot and they're going to defend when they need to, and they're going to be in the spot they need to be in.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's so important, as you grow as a player, that your partner, if you have a partner, is kind of coming with you on that journey. So if they have different intentions, if they're like, this is just something I really kind of just want to do on the side, and you want to grow in the sport and really take it far, then you have to have a partner that's willing to go the distance with you, or at least have the work ethic and the drive to go the distance with you.
Okay. If I was somebody listening to this podcast just now, like, oh, wow, I can't believe we have beach volleyball here. How would they be able to get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, so we have our website, so www.hydenbeach.com. So Hyden. Everybody seems to go Hayden on Hyden, Hyden. Yep, Hyden Beach. And we're on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram. Any questions, we have info@hydenbeach.com for people to ask questions. I get phone calls almost every day.
Good.
Inquiring about Hyden Beach, and especially now since it's getting a little bit warmer and nicer out, people are wanting to come outside. So
Yep. Everyone's trying to get out there.
So I guess last question for me is obviously recovery, near and dear to my heart.
And mine.
And Tom.
And mine.
All of us. It's part of it.
So, we built the place based off the assumption that needs to be sort of incorporated. I just did a survey, by the way, and found out half of the people on the respondents of the survey are starting to hear more about recovery services, but the other half are not. And most of those people that responded said, rest and sleep are their idea of recovery. So do you see, or how are you starting to see that incorporated more and more? Are you teaching that at the junior level? Because I know we've talked to them a little bit. Is that sticking, or do you see it more as like, I'm 40 years old, my knee's not working the way it's supposed to, or I'm getting sore when I usually don't get sore? Where do you see that? Where do you see that importance, or how do you start incorporating that, I guess would be the question.
So it's difficult, mainly for us because our academy is our kind of focal point at this point with building them up, trying to get them college scholarships and really investing in them because we see them every day. Yeah. They're high school players, high school students, right? And
they're invincible,
right?
They bounce back so quick.
They get no sleep. They hardly eat anything, and they're like, I'll just do 2-a-days. It's fine. Yeah. And the problem is that they don't see any issues because they're probably that they're young, and or they don't know they have a problem. Like, hey, you were incredibly dehydrated all day yesterday. Let me just get you hydrated. Do you feel any different? Yeah. Like they don't even know that there's a problem. Yeah. So
they don't have that experience yet.
Yeah, they don't have the experience yet. Yeah. And so it's just having, it's trust and buy-in. So they have to trust us first and foremost. So they have to trust, understand, okay, that we're trying to help them and make them better. So they have to have trust and buy-in from the people that are close to them. So their coaches, John and I, our other coaches on staff. And then we can start to slowly implement like just small changes. Hey, try to get 7 to 9 hours tonight. Or at least 7. Let's
go 7.
Yeah.
Go to sleep before 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you got to be here at 8. Let's let's get a little extra sleep.
Yeah.
Let's eat right.
Yeah. Let's make sure we're eating lunch if you're going to training at 4 o'clock. Like, come on. Come on.
Do you get to program out their weeks a little bit more with some strength along with the skill sets that needs to happen? So that's probably all incorporated.
We talk a lot about it. We just don't have a strength conditioning area down there, so it's been a little bit problematic.
Tough,
so everybody kind of does strength conditioning in their own areas because we get girls all the way from Gallatin and Nashville and Brentwood. So I mean, we have the whole kind of area, and so it's really hard to dial in their strength conditioning. We give them some exercises to do, some programs to do. John, over this past winter, he's gotten out into weight room with some of the girls, which has been really good. But that's an area that we're trying to kind of nail down a little bit better.
Okay,
cool. That's great. So for everybody in Middle Tennessee, they should check it out for sure. And if you're not in Middle Tennessee, because we'll have some people listening from outside, we'll check it out on the website and follow along because it's a great program. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, and we
have a tournament this weekend. We have people flying in from Texas.
Sweet.
Crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kortney, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, guys.
Really appreciated the conversation. I know I learned probably things I should know that I've just been too lazy to kind of.
We've been taking notes. We're data geeks as well, and we're writing things down.
I'm going to go weigh myself when I get done. That's pretty much what I'm going to do.
And do all of that. So thank you so much, Kortney. We really appreciate you having here. And everyone, if you like the podcast, give us a little rating. 5 stars is great. We'd love to have that. Ranks us up a little bit higher. Any notes, comments, feel free to give us constructive criticism. So we're moving along with this, trying to get better and improve. Any ideas for future podcasts as well. So thank you all so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thank you.